Aloha and good afternoon, everyone. Mahalo for joining us for our HSTA Town Hall with Congresswoman Jill Tokuda. I'm Logan Okita, an RTI coach at Nimitz Elementary and Vice President of the Hawaii State Teachers Association. We've heard from our members across the islands that they have many concerns about how budget cuts and policy changes from the Trump administration may affect teachers, students, and classrooms in our state and across the country. We're so fortunate that Congresswoman Tokuda is spending time with us today to answer your questions about these and other issues. She represents Hawaii's 2nd Congressional District, which includes suburban, rural parts of Oahu, as well as all of the neighbor islands. Before being elected to the U.S. House, Congresswoman Tokuda represented Kaneohe and Kailua in the Hawaii State Senate, where she chaired the Ways and Means and Education Committees, among others. A product of Hawaii's public schools, she is a Castle High grad. If you have a concern or question you'd like to share with her, please put your name and school or work site in the Zoom chat and I'll call on you in order. When it's your turn, I'll ask you to turn on your video and unmute your mic so you can chat with the Congresswoman. We're asking you to please keep your questions and comments brief so we can address as many concerns as possible today. We only have an hour. And please remember that we will share this video widely so the news media and the public will be able to hear everything we talk about today. If you have a concern that you do not want to share at this public Zoom meeting, please use the Share Your Story tab on the Congresswoman's website, and we are putting that link in the chat now. I've also been asked to remind you that you do not need to have your camera on if you don't want to, but you can if that's okay. And we do want you, though, to have your camera on if you are asking a question. Okay. Congresswoman Tokuda, it gives me great pleasure to welcome you to this town hall. Would you like to share some opening remarks?
Yes, no, thank you, Logan. And I just want to thank HSTA for making this opportunity possible. First of all, I know I can't see all of your faces at one time, but you're just, you are a sight for sore eyes after the last 24 hours that we have been through, and where I can think back to where I was pretty much exactly 24 hours ago. It is night and day in terms of, just the hope that you bring, and sadly, just the frustration and chaos, the madness, the anger, everything that we experienced with the President's State of the Union yesterday. But really, I just really wanted this opportunity to talk with all of you, with all of the things coming down, whether it's executive orders, whether it is the intention and the plan to literally decimate and destroy the Department of Education. You folks are on the front line. And I really want to hear from you. How are you feeling? What are you seeing? What are you hearing? I worry about our kids. I've got 2 boys at Castle. I'm both a public school grad and a public school mom right now. And I worry that as we have fears of ICE raids in communities, and I've been to Kona and I've talked to folks on Maui, that we have children who are right now living and dealing with a fearful situation of being rounded up, or what happens to their family or their parents, with so much just inhumane language, actions, and talk around our transgendered, family and friends. How are kids dealing with all of this? How are they feeling? And I've even gotten letters from kids who are worried about their parents losing their jobs. I mean, if we just look at the range of things that you are having to see every day, and thank you, you're helping our kids. And I know that in our families, both in the role you play, it's more than teaching, and we know that. You really play a healing role too in so many ways. And for me, it's just knowing what you're hearing and feeling. And then also, I need you to know that we're going to be here to fight for you, because I will lock myself to the damn building if that wrestling lady actually thinks that she is going to destroy the Department of Education. Definitely a person who's never been a part of our public schools as both a student, definitely not as a parent. If she was either one of those, she would know that she could not do that to the millions of children who see schools, our public schools, with public teachers by their side as the greatest opportunity that they have as in life, the greatest equalizer. And so we're ready to fight, stand by you, do whatever we have to do But I'm going to stop talking now because I really want to hear from all of you and answer as many questions as I can. And please know that this is not the end. And I want to keep having these conversations, and I want to see you in your schools and talk to you where you're at. So I hope this is just the beginning of our conversations together. So with that, open for questions.
Thank you so much. And please put your name and work site in the chat if you'd like to share a question or a concern. First up, I have Liberty from Honoka'a High School.
Hi. Hi, Jill. Hi, everyone. So I'm a special education teacher from Honoka'a High School. And just this year, our administrators said that they're cutting our special education program. They're cutting the amount of teachers and the amount of different learning environments available to our special needs students. And the district also is, there used to be some funding that the district would pay for. And I found out that they're no longer paying for it. And so the school is going to have to bear the cost. So I'm just like wondering, like, as far as advocacy, like, what can we do to stop that? Because it's against the law. It's going to leave our kids who have IEPs in the wrong learning environment. And it's going to impact their ability to access their free and appropriate education.
Absolutely. Thank you for being a SPED teacher, Liberty. It is not an easy job. I know that for sure, but we really need folks like you. This is something where I think you folks deserve an answer both from your administrator as well as your CAS as to why funding for SPED and inclusive environments, I think that's probably what they'll be decreasing, and other opportunities for our SPED keiki, why that is being done. Is it being done because a drop in enrollment, and you hate to hear that kind of thing? But honestly, if I had to guess, Liberty, you have the same amount of students and the same amount of needs. It's not like it has gone down. If anything, we probably would be seeing
It's gone up.
increase, right? And so you should be continuing to get those funds that are allocated for your SPED population. Why the complex area has decided not to give you additional funds to be able to support that, I think, again, that is a valid question that you should have for your CAS, or you should be getting an answer from your CAS as to why they've redirected those funds elsewhere. It may not be a sufficient answer, but I think they owe you one. I would say, especially in this time, when we are staring down the barrel of extreme cuts at the federal level, we need to actually dig deeper and invest more into public education, and especially SPED. You know, you have I don't want to even call her a secretary. You've got this wrestling woman who somehow thinks it will be okay to throw all of our SPED keiki over to the Department of Health and Human Services. And we know that they will not get that free and appropriate education that they deserve. No one at HHS actually knows what an IEP is to the fullest, and it will not be funded when it comes down to the state and the school level. And so this is the time for us to really be doubling down on support for various education programs, and to show the need and show the outcomes, quite frankly. When you're able to have, you know, the teachers, the learning environments, the resources, you really can make a huge difference in our kids' lives. And I will tell you, even when I was at the state level, in the state Senate, we were not funding as much as we needed to. It shouldn't take the threat of a class action lawsuit either, to really get all of us to recognize the need for us to invest more, whether it's the state level or the federal level. But I think, that's a lot of talk, but Liberty, you deserve answers from your principal and your CAS. You can probably show them the numbers, how your numbers have only increased, and therefore the resources should increase. It should not decrease. And right now, especially when there's a lot of threats to our SPED students, quite frankly, in terms of funding from the federal level, we need to really, again, put even more towards these, students and these classrooms, and to educators like yourself to really to show why it's so important that we invest, and what's really at threat should they decide to dismantle the DOE and to place SPED students under the care of, the Department of Health and Human Services, where we know they will not be funded and not be cared for in a holistic way. So.
Thank you so much. Renee, would you like to ask your question, or would you like me to just read it?
Yes, please. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I am the Title I linker for the Kailua Kalaheo complex. And that means that I'm helping the Title I schools in our complex area with their grant money and all that. I do know that about 66% of our schools in Hawaii are Title I schools. And so there's a significant amount of federal funding that schools receive. And my question is, will schools still receive these funds next year? Because I've already spoken with several principals and they're like, yeah, we couldn't even function the way we do now without these funds. So what do you know about that?
Well, the one thing we do know right now is they've had Title I and eliminating Title I in their sites. Project 2025 clearly identified Title I as one of the things that they would get rid of. In terms of how quickly that can happen, I think that's why we have to aggressively fight, not just in Hawaii, but across the country. We need Republicans to also recognize that Title I funds are making a difference in their school districts, in their congressional districts. I think we know that, right? It's not like it's only the blue states that would suffer if we lost Title I funds. In fact, in many cases, you've got rural America, you've got places where you have higher poverty levels. They are red, many cases, red states. And so if we were to get rid of Title I funding, we need to hear the outcry and the rage and the anger in our red states, in our red congressional districts, so that they understand that if they follow through on Musk and Trump's plan to decimate this particular funding and the entire Department of Education, that they're going to pay for it at the polls. That absolutely has to happen. I am going to hope that this would not be affecting next year's funding for Title I, but we have to make sure we don't give them an inch. And that really is where we have to make it very crystal clear. And we can even start by doing that for our community in Hawaii. We need to let the public know exactly what Title I funds do and how it makes a difference. Because we all in this Zoom room understand it. We get it 100%. But a lot of times when I talk to folks in the community, they have no idea where the money goes. And when they don't know where it goes and it's not personal to them, they think it's not necessary, right? So we have to put a real human face, how it's making a difference in our keikis' lives, your ability to actually be able to reach them and to teach them. All of these different things, we have to make it really clear. And that's one of the reasons I'm doing the collection of the Share Your Stories, because I want people to understand when they set their sights on eliminating Title I, here's exactly what it means for kids in the Kailua Kalaheo complex, right? Same with the Castle Kahuku, pretty much all the schools, I still don't know why Castle's not a Title I, but all the schools, right, are Title I. And that has made a huge difference in our ability to really care for all of our keiki. So I'm really hoping not in a year that you would be worried, that you can still plan. And that's the scary part, right? You got to plan for the coming year. But I will tell you this, that is where we have to lean heavily across the country. NEA needs to tell every teacher to come out and tell their member of Congress, hell no, don't touch my Title I, don't touch any of my funds, but make it real clear what would happen. So thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. As a follow-up to that, combining a couple of the follow-up questions in the chat. So are you saying that federal government hasn't decreased special education funding yet? And complexes are likely where the source of the redirection of funds is happening?
This is where it's bad that I know too much, even at the state level. I would have to take a look, but more, so far, the federal government has not decreased the funding that's going out to the states. There are horrible master plans that they have to just decimate this funding, to just decimate the Department of Education. That has not happened yet. But as we know, where the money finally trickles down is the state level through the weighted student formula, right? Then through the complex areas, SOUP complex areas, all these different parts. And so I don't know why you're getting less for SPED. That's why you deserve questions, whether they're doing it based on some calculation. Sometimes too, the CASs have access to additional monies and they're able to distribute amongst their schools. And I don't know why they pick one over the other. I would have to look, but that's why if you're receiving less money, it's not because we've given now less money from the federal level. That being said, having my old Ways and Means hat on, the federal government has never given enough. It's an unfunded mandate in so many ways when you look at public education. We'll fund defense to the hilt and then some. But when it comes to really, what does it mean, a free and appropriate, education, public education? What does it mean to actually provide that inclusive, supportive environment for our SPED students? What's needed in their IEPs as a result of IDEA? In so many ways, we have never at the federal level really paid what we should. And so, I don't want to say we decreased. Quite frankly, I don't think we've increased it enough to really be able to provide this kind of support. But in terms of how it's trickled down and why those decisions are being made about individual positions or funding, we got to look a little deeper first at the CAS and the school level. Maybe it has to go right up to the state and kind of get a better picture there. But again, this is where we actually need to show the outcomes and remind the public that investment is life-changing. I talked to the mother of a SPED student today, especially as they think about the scary part of aging out, right? There's so many supports that can make a difference between a child growing into an adult, having a real meaningful life, contributing to the community. If you lack all of these supports from the time that they're identified, it's horrible to think, right? In terms of the missed opportunity that child, that adult will have. And so, yeah. I'm going to get in trouble with the state, guys.
I bet they're as anxious as we are and probably are just trying to plan ahead. I'm gonna call on Valerie from Kekalike next.
Thank you for this opportunity. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Awesome. Okay. So I teach at Kekalike High School here on Maui. It's another Title I school, 9th grade social studies inclusion classroom. And my concern is I feel like within the media, social media, and all of this, that the misinformation is louder than the actual information. And so I was wondering what not only can we do, because there's only so many Facebook arguments I can get in with the community, but what can we do or what are you guys doing to get the correct information out? Because I have parents of SPED students who don't realize that their student falls underneath the umbrella of that funding that could potentially be in danger. And how do we let them know without overstepping? Like, how is the whole Congress and Senate letting people know what's real and correct?
Yeah, no, thank you, Valerie. And I will tell you, the disinformation that is out there, right, is just so pervasive. And sadly, that misinformation, disinformation, the lies, all of these things, sadly, that sticks a lot more than the truth and the facts. I mean, just look at the State of the Union last night. It was an hour and 45 minutes of a stream of lies that we heard, to the point where literally after it was done, you had articles upon articles from legitimate news sources fact checking and showing how all of these things were not in fact a fact. They were all lies. And that's insane to think that at the State of the Union, the President of the United States, what you're getting is misinformation at the source, right? They are the source of the misinformation. It's really hard to combat that. I wish I had the magic wand and the perfect answer, but they trust you. I'm not saying they don't trust me as a member of Congress, but you are their teacher. It was like I was talking to pediatricians today and I reminded them that they are the trusted agent too. They're a lifeline for their families. So when they want to have conversations about gender identity, if they want to have conversations about vaccinations, they trust their pediatrician. They trust their teachers. And so this, I think, is where honest conversations need to break through that social media cloud and all that misinformation that's out there. And they need to know in real human terms, look, if they cut funding, this will hurt your child. They need to understand that this is very personal. And if it's not personal, then I tell everyone in Hawaii, you are 1 degree away from impact. From all of the things that we have heard about through these executive orders, these cuts, these firings of federal employee, you may not feel it right now, but no, you are 1 degree away from a family member, a friend, a colleague, a coworker, a neighbor being impacted in some way, or you feeling that hurt and harm yourself directly. So it's important that you embrace that role as a trusted lifeline to the parents. And we need you to actually have those conversations with them. Get the right information. If it sounds a little funny or too extreme, ask you, does this make any sense? And help explain it to them in those terms. That's a lot of times why I'm trying to get these stories and trying to encourage people to share their stories, because if they don't hear otherwise, they're going to believe the things that they read. For example, with public education, you know, they love to use the line, well, we'll just give the money to the states. We'll give all the money to the states and let them make the decision. It's home rule. Every state is different. Let them decide. But we all know, again, first of all, that check will not nearly be big enough in terms of how much you actually need. And then ask yourself the question, if it was all given without guidelines or restrictions to states, we know that we might be more okay in Hawaii than other states, but it is a slippery slope to vouchers. It's a slippery slope to cuts in so many different areas where kids will not be able to get that education they deserve. And states being shortchanged will cut edges. They'll cut corners. They'll cut services. They'll cut things like lunch programs, free and reduced lunch programs. They'll cut other things like inclusive classrooms, other things just to particularly get by. And that is no good for the kids. But if you tell just a lay person, well, we're going to give all the money to the state and they can make their own decision. It sounds good on the surface, but unfortunately, we know a whole lot better that would actually hurt our kids so much more than it would help. They need to hear that from you folks. Again, in so many ways, you folks are such a trusted ally and a partner. We need you as probably more than you need us in many cases. You're more powerful in terms of your reach and that. So that would be my humble suggestion. I wish I had an answer on the disinformation because it is tough. You know, in terms of battling just it's like a swamp. You talk about swamps, right? Just wading through all of that, the lies and, you know, bad information.
Thank you. We're going to call on Matthew from Holualoa.
Hi, Jill. Thank you. My name is Matthew from Holualoa. I'm a teacher. You've advocated for our school in the past. We've got an easement road that runs through our school, and it's been a safety issue for. Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So it's been on the agenda for, I don't know, 12 years. We're trying to get funding for it. And this year we heard that capital improvement project system has been dissolved. So we're supposed to just wait for the state to advocate or for funding. So we're trying to figure out how do we advocate for funding for our neighbor island school. We're a small school on the Big Island. So how do we advocate for ourselves without overstepping and without, you know, just basically trying to be respectful about it? Yeah.
No, I had heard from some folks that they were kind of revamping the whole request process for CIP and projects and whatnot. I have a question. Have you had anyone other than your representatives and senators from the legislature come and visit your school?
As far as, so we've had all the, so our legislators have visited. You visited our school. Thank you for doing that. So yeah, we've had visitors, but I'm not sure who you mean. Our superintendent, I think, visited last year at some point.
Yeah, I'm thinking more sometimes what you need to do is invite the education chair and vice chair, the finance chair and vice chair, the ways and means chair and vice chair. Unfortunately, they probably don't have time to come right now, at least the money chairs during the legislature. Some might see it as an aggressive approach, but I think if you bring them to your campus and you see literally that's very dangerous. It's right through your campus. Kids are crossing back and forth over there, as I recall. It's been a couple of years, but as I recall, it's not a really safe situation there. You know, bringing them to see it, noticing some of the repairs that I hope had been made because you had some real structural issues, as I recall. And I think shortly after my visit, they did start to actually work on some of that as well. There was mold issues too in some other rooms.
Yeah, so they said that they basically have the superintendents are the people that they have to listen to as far as talking to the legislators. So we're just basically trying to get on the list. The priority list is what I'm trying to say. And and trying to move up that list a little bit. But I was just wondering if you had any suggestions on how to do that.
You know, back in my day, there was always a list. The state put forward as a priority list. It is about educating the members of the legislature about your needs, though. It's about making your voice heard. In some cases, it might mean making sure that, you know, certain folks come and visit you and it's promoted in, you know, the paper or, you know, the media or whatnot, and talking about road safety and how the kids have to deal with that every day, literally on their campus. It's one way that you get yourself worked up on the list potentially, but it also raises awareness for the legislature that's ultimately responsible for putting money in that CIP bucket. So I would just say the more you can get people to know what's going on your campus, invite them. You could even do something fun if you want to make it educational. Have your kids do a video to show how this is a problem or a concern, and share your video. It's a very passive aggressive way, you know, but nothing like kids helping you to make the point. They can learn about advocacy, but they can learn about public awareness, right? Public information campaigns, let's call it that, right? And they can do videos, and it can be part of a digital media kind of component or whatever you will. But I think even helping kids to help you express why this is a concern, why this is a safety issue. And, you know, you can send it out. You can post it through your Instagram, you can go viral. And I think that is one way that you can raise that awareness as much as possible, so that hopefully it will then, the goal is to translate on getting you higher up the list and getting an awareness and getting you funded and getting you moved. So it's a humble suggestion.
Yeah,
I'm mindful that it will be, you know, this is going to go public and then I'm going to get a call from the superintendent's office.
Yeah,
No,
and the same
I'm
thing
just
for us.
kidding.
We're encouraged to not do anything to go viral. So that's the challenge, you know, don't do anything to you know, that. So thank you.
But I understand your frustration, right? Because we never have enough money in those CIP buckets. There's never enough money for R&M. And too often, I remember when I was there and I was Ed Chair and Ways and Means Chair, too many of your schools were dipping into their WSF monies to pay for what really was structural improvements, especially on the neighbor islands where I believe DAGS is still, you know, the ones who takes care of the facility. And I fought hard to try to get that out. I know it was intentional when it was moved there in the first place, but I always felt like the schools became a stepchild of sorts. So it is tough. I know you can't advocate, but every school is also in that pickle where they're advocating to really push for their projects too and get it done, because how much longer can you wait is the question. And I never want to hear that anything's happened to kids who've been put in a dangerous situation right there on their elementary campus. So
thank you. Appreciate it.
I'll come visit you all again soon, hopefully.
That would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Kahula up next.
Aloha. Aloha. My name is Kahula. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. Thank you so much for giving the time and for representing us and just giving us space to share our thoughts and all our concerns. I'm a Kukukai Puni out in Nanakuli. I'm guessing you can kind of see where this question's going towards. A lot of we just had a really successful Olelo Hawaii, Mahina Olelo Hawaii this past February. We're feeling proud, feeling strong, we're feeling united. But now with the news coming on with the DEI executive orders and stuff, we're kind of a little nervous now. Do you have any insight about, I guess, the future of our Kaiapuni programs?
Yeah, I actually just met with OHA. Kai came up to meet with me a few days ago. CNHA was there. It is one of those scary things where I know this sounds odd, but you don't want to make too much noise because you don't want them to figure out we're there, right? When we think about the Native language program and funding for that, Native Hawaiian education funding and health and all these different things, but especially when it comes to Olelo Hawaii, right? The language monies, we kind of don't want them to figure out that we exist, so they hopefully ignore us. It's hard to explain this in words. Right now, they're going for really big cuts, huge cuts across the board, right? So they can get what they believe are billions of dollars at one swoop. I want them to leave Native Hawaiian programs alone and funding alone, right? I don't want them to think about, Indigenous language or immersion programs. The scary part is it's not too much of a separation to go from DEI and then mandates about English being the official language of the United States to where you start to go, uh-oh, are they smelling around and sniffing around and coming after us next, right? But that is where really at that particular point, we need to kind of pivot ourselves with what will be an Indigenous response and kind of a hell no, right? Whether it is with the Native Americans, the tribes, Native Hawaiians are not tribes for sure. But again, under that particular protective umbrella is where we're going to want to sit. Because there's a lot of members who don't want to mess with, Native American tribal issues because it could be a real detriment to their elections. I'm not saying everything comes back to elections, but they definitely listen when voting blocks, raise up arms and are opposed to them. So that is where if they start to smell around, we want to somehow get under that protective umbrella of our Indigenous and Native communities, which Hawaiians are, in fact, that, and have that protected. In many ways, it's good because it's a significant amount of funding and it's significant programming. But again, like I said, it's not big enough. It's not large enough where it's going to be valuable for them. They're going for the billions right now. So I'm hoping they don't find us. As I say this on a public Zoom, I hope they don't find us. But no, at that particular point, if they do, we will lob everything at them, including talking to the Department of Defense about how if you are going to squat on our lands here, you need to respect the culture, you need to respect the language, you need to respect the people. So don't mess with things like our immersion program and our charter schools that are helping to perpetuate Olelo Hawaii, all that kind of stuff. So, we have to have the plan A, B, C, D, like what happens in progression. But I do think there is a strategy there should they start to come after those particular funds, again, looped into a number of different things like let's hide under the Native umbrella. But also if it gets really, really bad, I'd pull that DOD switch. And especially where you're teaching in Nanakuli, right? They understand they have to be, they need to be, they should be good partners and neighbors. And that means a whole lot of things, a whole lot. I have a whole list of what I think they need to be doing, but respect for the language and the culture and the history. The history is a really important part, right? But they're trying to get rid of that too, as we see. But we really need to maintain and protect that history in Hawaii. So yeah, hold tight and let's hope we're not having to, get aggressive on this.
Oh yeah. Hiki no mahalo. Thank you.
Thank you, Malo.
Thank you. I've got 6 questions up in the queue for you.
Okay.
I've got Maureen with a question about federally funded public schools, federally funded preschools, sorry, if she wants to jump on.
Yes, hi, Maureen from Honokaa, Kealakahe, Konawaina, and Kohala. I just was wondering, I was told that our preschools are federally funded, and I was wondering, we don't have mandatory preschool. We don't even have mandatory kindergarten. Do you think that the Trump administration has plans to dismantle that or reallocate that?
Yeah.
And thank you again for being here today.
No, thank you. I believe, and I can't get my mouse to work. I was going to Google, but I believe you're a Head Start site, right? Especially if you're a federally funded preschool program. It would have to be a Head Start program, maybe even an early Head Start, depending on the age of the children. I really worry about Head Start because, again, at this point, the roadmap that we have to look to in terms of what they're doing and what potentially comes next is Project 2025, which I know HSTA was very aware of and doing a lot of education around. One of the things that they sought to eliminate was Head Start. Like, I mean, why would you want to get rid of education for our youngest children to give them a chance? Who knows? But why do they want to do any of this horrible stuff as well? And so right now we have not seen them, liquidating funding for, Head Start, but we have heard across the country that they have gotten rid of educators that were in their probationary period. I have been asking around to folks in Hawaii, let me know if you hear of anyone that has gotten notice of any kind of termination because of probationary status. We have heard that they have done that on the continent, have not heard necessarily yet any from Hawaii. If you hear of anything, please let us know. But from what we saw in Project 2025, their intention was to eliminate Head Start, which would be absolutely catastrophic. I think that's one of those things where if we start to see things fall, whether it be education funding, whether it be Medicaid funding or SNAP funding, these are going to be the critical questions that the state and even the county and even some of the private sector in Hawaii will have to come together to determine, what do we supplant? What can we save and at what levels? Because they won't be able to make everyone whole. But we don't want to lose a lot of grounds and gains we've made, especially in the area of early childhood, which is so important. I mean, are you a P3 teacher or educator?
Thank you. I now support teachers who are also in that in various sped lines, but this was something that came up at one of our team meetings. And so I just was wondering, we have some other grant programs that are going on right now in Hawaii that have preschool programs, not necessarily just pre-K, but preschool programs. And especially in our rural areas, we really don't have a lot of preschools.
Yeah.
And our families can't really afford preschool education and their rent and all of that. And so we have a lot of kids going to public schools that don't have any preschool experience. And so I know that I have some teachers that are preschool teachers that I'm concerned about for them. But I also, it's the kids, right? As well.
And you know
not gonna
better
get
than
the
I
education
do,
that they need.
especially with the little ones, we really only have 2 years with them in many cases to really make that huge difference. So when we just think of if we lose years, we lose generations of kids that will be going forward without that really critical, social emotional support, education. It's really about the, supporting and nurturing the whole child in these particular years. And you're absolutely right. I often tell folks, I remember an old statistic, it's old at this point because it was when I was in the state Senate, but I remember getting some statistics that on Hawaii Island in the Hilo complex area there, when they talked about preschool seats, they were saying there was about 60 to 70 kids per available seat for preschool. So let's not even talk if you can afford it. If you could even land a seat, it was harder to get into preschool than college or to get into, a private school, and so it really is, it's meaningful to have classrooms available. And if you lose a class of 20 here or 13 there or whatever it might be, that's a lot of kids missing out. And so, I can tell you there's a lot of strong supporters in Congress and quite frankly across the country that believe in Head Start and are going to fight for Head Start. Right now it is okay, but what worries me is that it was in the playbook that they would seek to defund and eliminate Head Start, just like Title I. I mean, again, I don't understand what your problem is with those who have the most to lose if you, eliminate these programs. So we're going to keep fighting for that.
So here's a question.
Okay, go.
So here's a question I got sent to me directly to ask to you, which goes perfectly with that one. What will happen if federal student loan programs are decimated?
Oh. What would happen if federal student loan programs are decimated? I think this is, and by the way, with Head Start and Title I and everything, and SPED, especially SPED, but this is where we need to really blitz the courts We need to blitz the courts, because this is literally stealing every opportunity, a young person has to be able to achieve their dreams. I mean, think of all of us on this call. If it hadn't been for Pell grants and Stafford loans and whatnot, I would never have been able to go to school. I was the first in my family to go to college and to get a degree. I couldn't afford it, and I went really far to DC. So I literally, went through it in 3.5 years with a really horrible GPA, but it's all I could afford because they jacked up the tuition the final year. But I think back to it and the fact that, student loans, Pell Grants, work study, that was the only way I could go to college. There was no other option for me. I was on my own the day after I graduated from college. So I never got to go to graduate school either, because I couldn't afford to, pay my rent and eat and go to school at the same time. And that's the story of many, but we got our chances because there were student loans. I think it's absolutely horrific that folks that have excessive amounts of money would think about stealing this very, very basic and, to me, fundamental right of people to be able to access student loans, to have a chance, to be a great contributing member of society. So I think this is one of those areas where we need to blitz them with lawsuits, in addition to many other things. But this will have to be one for the courts.
Thank you. And then I'm going to call on Buffy from Kanoelani.
Hi there, this is Buffy Whiteman. I teach first grade at Kanoelani Elementary in Waipio. I kind of want to go back to, I'm a special ed inclusion teacher, and I want to go back to, if we get rid of IEPs, 504s, and they fall under the Department of Health and Human Services, what will their services look like in our classrooms?
What does the Department of Health and Human Services know about a classroom? and what a classroom should look like, and what education is all about? I mean,
would they be their care coordinators, these children?
So what we have heard is that their intention is to break apart the DOE, right, the Department of Education, which is why they've talked about the civil rights parts and activities within the DOE going to the Department of Justice, and all of the IEPs or health-related areas going over to HHS. This in no way makes sense in terms of how it is the best decision for education and for educating a child and for running schools. But if it's a means to an end, if what you're trying to do is get rid of an entire department that exists, you have to break it apart into pieces and shove it wherever it might fit best, and then maybe even see what you've got left. And the worst part is whatever is left there that doesn't fit into other departments, that's where they're going to go state to states. It's up to you. We'll give you a check. You do it, right? You can have this ability to take care of these particular things. And I think that's where, again, in all areas, these things will fall into the cracks. That's my layman interpretation of what I see happening in the writing on the wall. But at the end of the day, it's not about what's best for the kids.
So they really don't know what they're going to do with these kids.
I don't think they care.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm being really rude, but I don't, if you cared about these kids like they were your own, then you think about what really is best for them and why we have schools and funding and all of the supports that go into it that we do today. I had a constituent who asked me, why has the budget for the DOE gone up so much since we created the Department of Education? Maybe we should go back to what it was before it was a department. And, he's talking about the early 70s, right, when we started the Department of Education. And I told him, we did not know what it really was to educate a child and what went into educating a child back in 1970. There's a lot of changes in terms of what we know children need, teachers need, schools need to be supportive environment in the last 50 plus years. So you're asking me, why is it much bigger? Well, because we know that you have to feed a child so that they're not hungry, so that they can learn. You need to create inclusive environments. I said, even for IEPs and for SPED, we were not identifying kids in the 1970s. My mother was born deaf in one ear. I remember telling him. They thought she was slow. Up until the 3rd grade, they thought, you know, she just wasn't smart. I remember her telling me that they thought she was slow, that something was wrong with her. And then someone happened to test her hearing, and they figured out she couldn't hear. She couldn't hear anything that the teacher was saying. If we think about how much we've progressed in terms of really making sure that we have early intervention, that we have all of these, we're preparing our kids in the best way possible, we're identifying them in the best way possible. Yeah, it costs more than it did in 1970, but there's really good reasons why it does too, why we need to support our teachers. Quite frankly, we need to support even more, as I said in the very beginning. But the reality is, for some of these folks looking back to before there was a DOE, they need to think about what it really looked like back then. And would they put their child through that educational
Right.
system, knowing what we know today is needed for every child to really learn and to grow. And I think if they ask themselves that basic question, they'd agree that we are in a far better place today than we were back before we had one department taking care of the education of our children, supporting schools and teachers, and giving them everything they needed to do the best by our kids, not piecemealing it out and hoping no one drops the ball. And I fear
Right.
that's what will happen if, I know that's what will happen if we dismantle the DOE and we rely on all these other departments to somehow know what it means to educate a child.
Right. Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for what
And
you
thanks
do.
for thank you for fighting for us, because this administration is beyond disappointing.
It is. It is. I think some people may have wanted to give them a chance, but everything I've seen so far, we can't afford. We can't afford the kinds of actions that we're seeing. And that's the bottom line,
Thank
right?
you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And so I have 3 more questions in the queue with 12 minutes left on our clock. So I'm going to jump to Jennifer Kaikala from Lanai.
Okay. Sorry, I was having trouble unmuting. Okay. Hi, Jill. This is Jennifer Kaikala from Lanai. I'm here with Brenda as well, and I know you've met both of us. Anyway, our concern is regards to the J1 teachers, the J1 visa teachers. I'm not sure you know that we have 12, I believe, J1 visa teachers on Lanai, and without them, I don't know who would be in the classroom because we don't have the subs, we don't have the staff. 4 of those teachers teach special education in some of our most difficult classrooms. They're worried. We're worried. We're worried about our students if the J1 status teachers is disrupted for whatever reason. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a huge concern. I'm hoping you guys can hear me because it says I have a low system audio quality. I'm okay. All right, very good. That is something that we have to watch and make sure. And I know we don't need to say this on this particular call, but if they have any particular concerns, if anything has happened, they've received any kind of notifications or anything, please reach out to our office. And this is for anyone on the call, that one of the things we are doing for a number of individuals, you don't need to share your story, but actually we can do casework for you. If you say you need help with the federal agency, sign the privacy release, we can talk you through and try to help you through whatever situation you might be experiencing. We've got a lot of folks right now that are in those tough situations. So please, if they are being faced with anything, Jennifer, make sure you ask them to reach out to us, and we can do so and have that conversation in confidence, knowing that it's a real scary time. This whole issue of immigration is really, really, it's mind-boggling right now, and we know there's a lot of fear. If you ask me, though, I think this administration will not touch the J1 visa programs. In many particular cases, as shrewd as it is, they want to keep folks in the country that are, providing certain services, whether it's healthcare, whether it's teaching, whether it's working in agriculture. But there is a fear that right now they're doing such broad sweeps and swoops that a lot of other people will get caught up in it as well. But these are capitalists. that are running our country. Those are billionaires that are running Doge, right? And again, shrewd and unethical, but they will discriminate against immigrants and migrants and anyone who does not look like them. And it's really about what can you do for me? And so that's not to say that J-1 visas will be safe, but I have a feeling they will approach that differently from others that are out there. And it's shrewd and horrible, and it's despicable. But that's also, I think, the way they think and the way they operate.
Thank you so much, and I will share that with them. And I did like your outfit last night.
Oh, thank
Thank
you.
you.
But yes, please tell them to reach out. We can talk
Okay, will
confidentially
do.
as well. Thank you.
Okay, will do. Thank you.
Thank you. And next we have Sarah from Kauai.
Hi, Jill. Thank you very much for your leadership. We really appreciate that you are so present. I was at a meeting on Saturday, and they were like, well, Kauai has the best person. We're so lucky we have Jill Tokuda. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
So my question is about COFA students, COFA families.
Yeah.
Because I am worried that they'll either pull COFA completely, or that and this happened to a student of mine, that because their countries are so messed up from what we did to their country, that their paperwork system is so slow that even if they are documented, that their passports take months, if not years, to get renewed, and so they don't have proper paperwork. And so I'm really worried about what's going to happen to our COFA families. Is there any talk about that, or is that kind of off their radar because they're such a small minority in many parts of the continent? Thank you so much.
I wish I could say that they were off their radar, but we have heard in Hawaii that we've had COFA, COFA migrants actually deported. And that's really crazy, to your point about how we screwed up their country, right? We screwed up their ability to actually make a life in their home. Honestly, for me, they shouldn't need any paperwork. We have a compact, we have an international agreement with their country, right? And so I don't even get how you can deport them. This is an obligation that we should be paying and paying and paying and paying for because of what we did generations ago. Yet we are hearing that they are being deported. I've been on, our staff's been on calls with We Are Oceania and other advocate groups as well. And even, their government representatives from the different countries. And I got to find out exactly what the number is, but it was appalling to me that they were rounding up even COFA. It gives you a really sad, it paints a scary picture though, right? That originally when they first started this whole process, they said, we're going to go after the murderers and the rapists and the hardened criminals. And, they had all kinds of, characterizations. Clearly it was indiscriminate, it was just basic and indiscriminate rounding up of whoever they can, that it's just about a number to them, right? Like we can show I deported X amount of people. Last night, he claimed he deported the most out of any president, which was a lie, by the way, completely false. But it's about bragging rights. It's a number. It's not even where they come from, what they may have done, where they are in their process or paperwork, which we know that for many of them, they've been waiting for years to actually get a chance to even get asylum. We're not talking about COFA, but others, right? And so not even their own fault, the fault of our own system. They're being rounded up and they're being hauled out. And so for any COFA families that are concerned about it, that you're hearing, we can at least give them folks to reach out to if they already have not, connected up with folks that can help walk them through the process, whether it's the Immigrant Rights Center or whether it is We Are Oceania or Pacific Gateway Center. These are on Oahu, but they do have a lot of outreach on the neighbor islands too. So reach out to us later. If in particular you want to know what the resource is for Kauai COFA families, I'd be happy to share that. But we do have eyes on that because it was appalling to hear that as part of this, that our COFA families were being rounded up, and they absolutely shouldn't be. And you're 100% right in terms of, we did this to them. we can't even get their passport. You know, we know the passport process was broken. They don't come with paperwork. But talk about injury and, you know, insult to injury. When you do what we did to their country, and then we deport them despite having an agreement. So, you know, please reach out if you'd like us to get you some resources on Kauai specifically for that.
Thank you. We also have a question from Valerie. This time her question's about EL.
Thank you again. My question is that 3 days ago, there was an executive order signed making the English language the official language of the United States. My question would be the amount of Native Hawaiian speakers, Aloha Hawaii speakers that we support within our schools. What does that look like for the words that we use within the classrooms? What does that mean for their supports, their family supports? We've already erased the language once and it's making a comeback and we're trying to push it more. It kind of goes along with the Kaiapuni program question. What are our options if, like, how does that executive order affect us here in Hawaii? Not just the schools, but as a whole.
Right. I would say this. In Hawaii, based on our constitution, English and Hawaiian are both recognized languages for our state. So the United States might wanna be, you know, just English. Okay, I have a lot of disagreements there, but in Hawaii, we recognize 2 official languages. I actually took to the floor last year. It was the most nerve-wracking 1-minute speech I ever gave, but I did it in a little Hawaii. Hopefully I didn't butcher it too much, but to make the point that in Hawaii, this is what we also speak. It is recognized. You know, you can get documentations, you can put documentations in it, all of these different things. So I would say continue. Part of what this fight is going to be is acting in defiance and resisting. And I think especially when it comes to language, it's just so much a part of who people are, right? Whether it's Hawaiian, whether you're speaking Tagalog, whether you're speaking Ilocano, right? Korean, you know, Japanese, whatever it might be, that is your language. That's part of who you are. And to your point, we have fought so hard to bring back the language. And so, yeah, he's got a lot of EOs out there. He don't like paper straws, you know, he's got the English language, which they look at their grammar and their usage of words, really horrible. They really should think about that one. Keep on doing it. We've got to resist. That's part of it too. We got to resist. We need to be defiant, especially on behalf of our kids. So keep teaching, keep talking, and we just move forward. And I feel sorry for anyone who has to change who they are or feel that they have to change who they are because of these dumb executive orders. One of the things I've heard a lot about is folks scrubbing their websites for DEI or changing their programming or changing who they hire because of DEI or even because an individual might be trans. That's bullshit. I mean, that's really what it is right there. It is about being defiant and being authentically who we are and acting as we should and doing the right thing. Because if we actually listen to them, we're erasing us, right? It's erasing us. So keep talking, keep fighting, keep teaching. And I think we are going to be so much better for it because this too shall pass. It's going to feel like a million years, but this absolutely will pass. In the meantime, we keep fighting and we keep doing what we have to do. So, yes.
I was gonna say we hit our time, but I also think that that's gonna be the statement that wraps us and gets us all wrapped up. Mahalo, Congresswoman Tokuda, for spending this time with us and for fighting for the public schools, our teachers, and the keiki of Hawaii and the country deserve. Thank you so much to our members from across the islands for being here today and expressing your concerns and for all you do for our keiki every day. We know there are many unanswered questions and lots of uncertainty, but we know that if we stick together, we can support each other and do what's best for our students. And I have a feeling this isn't going to be the last time we gather to talk about some of these issues, and it's definitely not the last time we're going to have these conversations and have have hive mind come together to think about what we can do next. So thank you, everyone. Enjoy your Wednesday evening and have a great rest of your week.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. I'll see you at school.